Good morning. We are extremely pleased that you are here. It is good to come together for the purpose of co-creating. Do you agree? You are knowing what you are wanting. You are appreciating the contrast of your time and place. Easier to answer that sometimes than others, yes? Depending upon the degree of contrast. By contrast, do we mean ecstasy and agony? Yeah. Do we mean fair weather and foul weather? Good relationships, bad relationships, plenty of money, not enough money. But we are not really meaning so much contrast in the sense of all of those extremes. Not contrast in the sense of so many extremes as variety, although that kind of contrast certainly is variety, isn't it? But we want to remind you that you are focusing mechanisms, and of course when contrast is extreme, it's quite easy to focus toward what you are wanting, in the sense that you can tell very clearly what you prefer when you're living something you don't prefer. Easy to say it, at least. And we want you to know that from our vantage point, we see rockets of desire shoot from you when your contrast is exaggerated. But we are not here only to talk about the desires that are born from that strong contrast. We want to talk about all desire that is born from all variety. We want you to think in terms of being focusing mechanisms. We want you to remember that you are source energy in physical bodies. Kind of hard for you to remember that sometimes because you are so enthralled with the fleshiness, bloodiness, boniness of your beingness that you forget that you are energy, consciousness. And so we can see when you are this full-fledged manifestation, living in a fully, knock on wood, full-fledged manifestational environment, we can see how you might give an inordinate amount of your attention to the result of vibration, even more than you give it to vibration itself. And that's really what your physical world is. That's what you're living today. It's the result of vibration. But when you are so immersed in your physicality that you give nearly all of your attention to what is manifested, then you miss your ability to create. It's sort of like the painter does not dabble with his finished painting for years upon years that follow. The sculptor doesn't take the clay that's already been taken to the kiln and fired and try to keep molding it in that sense. In other words, we want you to realize that the manifestation is the manifestation, and whatever it is, it is. But if you would give your attention to what's in the process of becoming, rather than giving so much of your attention to what has become, you would loosen up and you would find much more flexibility in those fluid, flexible ethers of vibration, where stuff that's manifested is manifested. And once it's manifested and you turn your attention to it, it's just a harder way of going about it. Now, we're not saying that you should not be aware of your physical world, but we notice that most of our human friends give almost all of their vibrational offering in response to what they are observing. And the thing that's tricky about that then is that it sets you off on this course that doesn't work for any of you, even though most all of you attempt it. And that's, you spend all of your time trying to organize the manifestations, organize them, label them, pigeonhole them, debate about them. There is a whole world in the process of being created that would be so much easier for you to create it if you weren't mucking around in the things about what is that you don't like. Now, we have to be fair about this and say that you stand out here on this leading edge, and this physical world that you are standing in is that leading edge full of the data that helps you to launch your new intention. And so certainly we're not wanting you to withdraw from your physical. We're just, with all of this, rampaging that we're giving you here. We're just wanting you to make a decision to give some less attention to what is and more attention to how what you are thinking about feels. We want the criteria that helps you to decide what you're going to give your attention to be, not because it is, not because it's manifested somewhere, not because it's somebody's reality or even your own. We want you to use your criteria for what you give your attention to be, how does it feel when I give my attention to it? Even better, how does this feel in relationship to that? How does this feel in relationship to that? If you will begin directing your attention based more upon how it feels, which is your in the moment vibrational sensor of what you're doing creatively, then you can change your world in anything you want in a very short period of time. But if you are a keen observer of what has been created, and some of it pleases you and some of it doesn't, then you're messing up your vibration with the part of it that doesn't please you, and you're using as your excuse, it's true, it's reality. And we say, so what? So what? Anything that's true just means somebody gave their attention to it long enough to make it true. And then when you come along behind and say, well, somebody is spreading a rumor based upon something that doesn't have anything to do with me, and then they're putting a label on it and calling it pandemic, must be big, not even epic, it's pandemic. Do you know how big pandemic is? Pandemic means everybody on the planet should be afraid of this all at the same time. And we say, we have never ever seen anything like that, and we've seen everything. So when you are faced with realities that are being offered to you by someone else, and you're not using your sensing mechanism as the criteria about the validity of the importance of it to you, but you're taking somebody else's word for it. They said it's important, so I should give it my undivided attention. And what you've got to begin to notice is that what they keep thinking is important, that they keep thinking that you should give your undivided attention to, is stuff that feels bad when you give your undivided attention to it. And we say, somebody's forgotten completely about their own guidance system. Somehow you've set it aside and you're letting somebody else decide what is important. And we say, we would, if we were standing in your physical shoes, get hold of our own guidance mechanism, and we would leave all of them out of the equation because their motives are different than your best interests. And we're not just talking about the spreader of the word pandemic. We're talking about anyone who seeks to influence anyone for any reason, because we want you to understand that you are extensions of source energy. Sometimes we don't think you really get what that means. That means you didn't just get started here in this physical body. That means you are consciousness, genius consciousness, that which you call God consciousness here in this physical body. And here you are out here on the leading edge of thought. And you joyously came into this environment of great variety, knowing that it would inspire within you new sensations of desire. Nothing ceases to be. Everything continues to be. And so here you do. You come forth into these magnificent bodies as genius source consciousness, having your individual exposure to contrast, which gives birth to the new idea. And when that new idea is born within you, source says, good idea. Source says, you should know. Source says, no one better to come to that conclusion than you right here on the leading edge of your experience. So then we come along and we say to you, when you ask, it is given every single time. And that's exactly what we're talking about. When contrast causes a preference to be born within you, source rides the wave of that conscious thought and immediately becomes vibrationally at one with the new desire that was born out of the contrast that you lived. So the largest part of you, the source energy part of you, lived the contrast along with you, felt the desire being born within you. You know when you don't have enough money, how you want more money? You know how when you're sick, you want to be well? You know when the roof blows off your house, you want the roof to be back on your house? In other words, you know how contrast causes desire to be born. And every time that desire is born, source says yes immediately, instantaneously, and becomes vibrationally one with that. Now we can see how those of you in physical bodies who are getting really sort of hung up on the physicalness of your physicality, the physicalness of your physicality. It's just awkward to be physical, isn't it? We know how you get hung up on that physical stuff. And what we notice is that you get so involved in the physical that you don't pay attention to the vibrational. And yet everything that is now physical was at one time vibrational. We want so much for you to get the clear conscious knowing that you are in the process of becoming vibrationally. And then you allow yourself to become what you already became. That's what the art of allowing is. Finding a way to let myself become that which I have already become on some level of my being. On all levels of your being, you are setting forth these preferences. And source says, yes, 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 yes. So if you could see you the way we see you, you are the become being of all of this stuff that from your perspective is being held for you in vibrational escrow. In other words, it hasn't manifested yet, so you don't think it's happened. But from our perspective, it's already happened. You caused it to happen as you sifted and sorted. With the genius focused mechanism of your mind, you focused it into being, and source, the source part of you, went right along with that and became it instantaneously. Now, the reason that this is so important is because when that all happened, a very powerful vibrational signal came into being. The signal that really is who you are began radiating in a new vibrational way. And the signal of who you are and who you have just become is the most dominant signal in your universe, and it is now calling you to become complete with it. And when you hear the call and move toward it, you feel better and better and better. And when you get there, you feel ecstasy. But if you don't hear the call and you keep listening to some person who doesn't know anything except that it serves him to scare you, talk about pandemic, and you respond to something outside of you, then what happens to you is you move away from the call that is calling you. And the crevasse between who you really are and who you are allowing yourself to be in any moment gets wider.